Welcome to this, hopefully the final video presentation on free energy generation by the forces of gravity. I can be confident that the evidence presented in this video, the evidence shown on this sheet, also displayed on the front page of my YouTube channel, will conclusively prove mathematically that we are dealing with facts, not fictions, not falsehoods, not deception. We dealt with deception a little bit in a previous video when I tried to illustrate how wrong the so-called law on thermodynamics is. Energy can in fact be created. But before we do that, let's take care of a little bit of a housekeeping matter. If you go to your computer screen and look for a little emblem that says CC, which stands for closed captions, and if you press on that CC, then the video will show the printout of every word that I said. And if I mumble and fumble and mispronounce a word here and there, it will spell it out for you correctly. So, having taken care of that, let me go back to free energy, and is particularly the concept of the first law of thermodynamics. I was promoting one of my projects, which I now call the Paulus process. When it was in the early stages, I was able to get into the office of the chief executive officer of a firm that was dealing with the design, the engineering of designs of big commercial projects. And I tried to persuade him about this free energy bit. Well, he listened politely at first, but very soon he ushered me out to the door and showed me where to leave. He said, "I cannot talk about free energy to the members of my staff because they will just laugh in my face. It just doesn't exist." But this fine gentleman, as he ushered me out the door, just before I left, he extended his hand out to me and said, "Let me shake your hand so that I can say, I shook the hand with the man who won the Nobel Prize in Science and who proved that energy can be created." In case you are watching and seeing this video by chance, dear sir, thank you very much for your kind encouragement, because I have remembered it ever since. Now, this particular process is an electrochemical process which breaks apart large molecules electrically, and then the molecules reconfigure themselves, and when hydrogen recombines with oxygen, then that gives off more energy than an electric spark takes to disengage it. So with this process, I have the figures calculated in repetitive experiments. If you were to install this project in a hot water tank, you would buy 1,000 watts from the electric company, and you would change that energy of 1,000 watts into 2,000 690 watts. So it changes energy and increases the output by more than 250%. But we're not talking about this one right now. We're talking about the gravity issue. For the gravity issue, I also have some other illustrations. This gravity issue operates on the basis of a bicycle pump. A bicycle pump is actually a hydraulic pump. On the backstroke, air enters in past the diaphragm into this chamber, and on the downward stroke, the pressure pushes all that air that was in here out through a tiny little nozzle, and it can put 100 psi into your bicycle tires. And that is exactly how this gravity-sourced free energy generation functions. The source of gravity in a liquid, possibly from a building as high as the Eiffel Tower, 300 meters high, builds up pressure in a pipe, and it pushes, it builds up the pressure, and it lifts up a pump, a ballast, that is 18,000 kilograms. And then on the second phase of the thing, by switching just a couple of valves, then the piston is no longer connected to the water pressure of the building of the Eiffel Tower. Now, these 18,000 kilograms push down and push the water back up, not through a same-sized conduit, but through a smaller conduit, and leaves enough energy left to drive a generator. Not to complicate it further, but to make it more efficient, instead of having one pump, you have two pumps. And when one is in the one cycle, the other one is in the other cycle, and there is never any point of rest, of a stillstand, Stillstand in German. But there's a continuous flow, and the exact number of the force that is applied to the generator you find on that chart. And that chart proves to any doubter, that chart is a mathematical fact and mathematically proves exactly how this function works. If you are still in doubt whether it works, here's another principle. Exactly the same thing. You have a hydraulic pump which lets the air pushes grease into that tiny little chamber, and then you push down, and the grease comes out with such force that you can shoot it across your driveway. It goes 10 feet into the air. That's exactly how it works. And yet there's a third example. The third example is what is called the new-co-man. Just like new, just like company, co, just like man, all in one. The new-co-man is a man who lived in Britain, in England, in the early 1700s. That is his name, new-co-man. Check it out in Wikipedia. And new-co-man, he invented a system where he pumped water that was a perennial problem in the deep coal mines of Britain, and you may be a couple of 100 feet underground. Now, how do you pump that water from 200 feet underground up to the surface and get rid of it with a 17th century technology? Well, he did it. And in Wikipedia, there is an illustration which shows how he did it. And he did it with thermal energy, where he built a fire underneath a water tank, and that created steam. And then by flipping the valves, just by flipping valves, he was pumping water in his deep mining shaft 300 years ago, hundreds of feet up in the air. That should answer your question, how do you move water when it's down below back up again? Well, this system uses the same principle as the Nuco man did 300 years ago. But instead of building a fire and instead of creating steam, we're using gravity. And his fire went out, and he had to keep stoking his fire. But gravity never diminishes, it never decreases, and you can use it 10,000 times and it is the same as it ever was before. And simply by changing two valves, we are using the force of gravity that is exerted in a column of liquid hydraulic fluid, whether it is actual hydraulic fluid or just plain ordinary water. We are using the force of gravity to lift up 18,000 kilograms. And then we switch valves, and then the 18,000 kilograms come back down again and do the work all over. So the force of gravity is working both on the way up and it is working on the way down. But all the talk that I may be presenting here, and I may get all excited about it, and I do because it's a real thing. Look at the facts. Look at the mathematics on that sheet of paper, and it will convince you that this methodology of harnessing the force of gravity will change the world. And instead of having high power tension lines going from the Hoover Dam to California and who knows where, every building, the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building, every building can have its own electric generating power plant, which is driven by the force of gravity simply by having two pumps going up and down and up and down and doing the work without end. And the only energy that you or I or anybody else has to put in is that tiny little bit of energy that it takes to take a solenoid to flip and open a valve and close a valve. And all we have to do is flip a valve, and flip a valve, flip a valve, flip a valve. And gravity does the rest of things. Well, look at the facts. Look it over with a fine-tooth comb. And if that does not convince you, then I would say, well, what can I say? There's nothing more that I can say. So go to it, look at it, and put it to work. And see to it that somebody else will put it to work if you can't. I myself, I'm 84 years old. I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to benefit from it in any way. And that is why it is all in the public domain, lest some big corporation takes over and fleeces the public by having a monopoly over the generation of free energy. It is free. It is there for you, for everybody. Grab it and run with it. Go to it. Nice talking with you. Hope to meet you in person someday.